Welcome to Sleepy Lore. Tonight, we tell the story of Persephone and Hades, a myth of seasons and separation, of a young woman who was taken into darkness and who found in that darkness something she chose to return to. Allow yourself to settle in, breathe slowly, and let the story carry you. There was a time, long before memory, when the world knew no winter. The earth was soft and warm in every season, fields stretched on without end, thick with wheat and barley, heavy with the smell of something sweet just beginning to ripen. Bees moved slowly through the air, rivers ran clear and cold over smooth stones, and flowers grew everywhere, in every color, in every shape, as though the ground itself could not stop offering gifts upward to the sky. This was the world that Demeter had made. She was the goddess of the harvest, and the earth obeyed her as a child obeys a gentle parent, not out of fear, but out of love. When she walked across a hillside, green followed her footsteps. When she rested her hand against the bark of a tree, the fruit came faster. She knew the name of every plant, the particular smell of soil before rain, the exact angle of autumn light that told the wheat it was time. But of all the things she loved one thing most of all: her daughter. Persephone was young in the way that spring is young, not because she lacked wisdom, but because there was something in her that had not yet learned to be still. She laughed easily. She ran through the fields with her arms open, as though she wanted to gather the whole world into them. She could spend an entire afternoon doing nothing but collecting flowers, laying them out in careful arrangements on the grass, studying their colors, then letting the wind scatter them again. She was not reckless. She was simply alive in a way that made everything around her more alive. On the day the story begins, Persephone had walked further from home than usual. The path had led her through a grove of olive trees, past a stream she had crossed by stepping on flat stones, and into a wide meadow she had never visited before. She had not planned to come so far. She had simply followed the light, which was particularly soft that afternoon, the kind of light that appears in the last hour before the sun begins to lower, turning everything it touches gold. The meadow she had found was very quiet. Soft light came through the leaves of a grove of cypress trees at its edge. The grass was deep and cool. The air smelled of something she could not name, green and dark and faintly sweet, like water from a very old spring. And there, growing at the center of the meadow, was a flower she had never seen before. It was a narcissus, but unlike any she had known. Its petals were pale as moonlight, and it gave off a scent so delicate it was almost impossible to be certain it was there at all, the way you sometimes catch, for just a moment, the smell of rain before the storm arrives. She moved toward it slowly. The flower had been placed there. It was not the work of any gardener, any bee, any ordinary arrangement of wind and seed. The narcissus had been planted in that exact spot, in that exact meadow, by something older than gardens. A trap is perhaps too harsh a word. A lure. A door, shaped like a flower. When Persephone reached out and closed her fingers around the stem, the ground opened. It did not crack or crumble. It did not shake. It simply parted. As quietly as water parting around a stone, a seam appeared in the earth, and from it rose a darkness deeper than shadow, and a sound like the slow exhale of something enormous finally breathing again. From that darkness came 4 horses, black as the space between stars. Their hooves did not strike the ground so much as flow across it, soundless and steady, like dark water moving through a dark channel. Their breath rose in slow plumes. Their eyes reflected no light at all. And behind them, a chariot carved from iron and bone, and behind the reins of that chariot stood Hades, lord of the Underworld. He did not look the way that fear imagines him. He was tall, and his face was the face of someone who had spent an eternity watching the world from a distance, a kind of longing in his expression, careful and held back, the way a man looks at a candle flame when he has been cold for a very long time. His dark robes moved without wind. His eyes were the color of deep water in a place where the light does not reach. He looked at Persephone, and she looked at him. For one moment, just one, neither of them moved. Then he extended his hand, and the chariot swept forward, and the earth closed again behind them. Above, in the meadow, the narcissus remained. Its petals drifted in a breeze that had come from nowhere. Then it was still. Demeter heard nothing. She felt everything. There is a particular kind of knowing that does not come through the ears or the eyes. It comes through the body, through the chest, through some older part of the self that learned grief before language existed. The moment the earth closed over her daughter, Demeter stopped where she stood, in a field many miles away, and knew. She did not cry out. She became very still, the way a struck bell is still, not empty, but vibrating with something that has not yet resolved into silence. And then she moved. She crossed mountains and valleys, rivers and coastlines. She walked through the night and into the next day and the next. She asked everyone she passed, travelers, farmers, nymphs resting beside springs, old men mending nets at the water's edge, if they had seen her daughter. They shook their heads, or looked away, or gave her food she didn't eat, drink she didn't taste. The earth around her began to change. It happened slowly, the way a tide withdraws. The green deepened into yellow. The yellow paled to straw. The wheat that had been standing tall began to lean, then bow, then lie flat against the ground. Trees held their leaves a little longer than usual, as though they were uncertain, as though they could feel something was wrong and did not want to let go. But eventually they let go, and the fruit stopped coming, and the soil grew hard, cracked along the surface in long, branching lines, like the dried beds of rivers that had forgotten how to run. And the air turned cold in a way it never had before, a deep cold, settled and patient, that did not feel like the cold of morning or the cold of shade, but the cold of something that intended to stay. Demeter did not notice, or rather, she noticed everything, and grieved everything, and walked on. She found, eventually, an old woman sitting alone by a roadside well. The woman's name was Baubo, and she looked at Demeter with the direct gaze of someone who had already seen all the sorrows the world had to offer, and had decided, somehow, to go on living anyway. She did not flinch from Demeter's grief. She did not offer easy consolation. She poured Demeter a cup of cool water. Demeter accepted it. They sat together for a while, not speaking. The silence was the particular kind that is not empty, the kind that holds two people the way a cupped hand holds water. Baubo broke a piece of bread and set it on the stone between them. Demeter looked at it for a long time. It was Baubo who finally told her what she had heard from Helios, the sun, who sees everything from his chariot above the world. She told her slowly. She did not soften it, but she told it gently. She told her about Hades. The underworld was not what Persephone had expected. She had expected darkness, and there was darkness, but it was the darkness of a moonless sky full of stars, full of its own dim and sourceless light that seemed to come from the stone walls themselves, as though the rock remembered the sun it had once been near and was slowly releasing that memory into the air. She had expected cold, and there was a coolness, but it was the coolness of deep stone, of a cave in summer, where the air sits still and rests. The palace of Hades was enormous. Its ceilings were so high they disappeared into shadow. Its halls were paved with black marble that caught the light of torches and held it, soft and amber, deep inside the stone. The pillars were carved from obsidian. The doors were tall and soundless on their hinges. Everything was very quiet. Persephone sat in a room at the center of the palace. She had not been harmed. No chains, no darkness. The room was furnished with care. A low bed spread with dark linen, a table set with food she did not touch, lamps that burned with a steady orange flame that did not flicker. A window of black crystal looked out over the gray asphodel fields, where the ordinary dead wandered slowly, looking for something they could not quite name. She did not eat. She had heard the stories. She knew that food from the underworld bound you to it, the way a knot, once tied, is harder to undo than to make. Hades came to see her. He did not speak much. He was a god who had ruled in silence for so long that words came slowly to him, carefully, like objects carried across a long distance. He told her she was not a prisoner. He told her she was free to walk the palace, to go where she wished within its bounds. He told her that he had wanted, for a very long time, for there to be someone beside him in this quiet kingdom. She did not respond. He left. She sat alone in the still room, listening to the sound of the palace. It breathed around her, slowly. She could hear, very faintly, the river Styx somewhere beneath the floors, a sound like wind moving through reeds, or like rain very far away. She could hear her own heartbeat. She could hear the particular quality of silence that belongs only to underground spaces, heavy, complete, and in some way deeply peaceful. She thought about the flowers she had left in the meadow above. She wondered if they were still there, or if the wind had already scattered them across the grass. Zeus saw everything. Or rather, he felt it. The world above ground had gone quiet in the way a house goes quiet when something inside it has broken. No harvest, no new growth. The human beings who worked the fields were frightened, and their fear rose like smoke, thin and persistent, until Zeus could not ignore it. He summoned Hermes. Hermes was the messenger of the gods, quick as thought, lighter than wind. He was young in the way that things which never age are young, not naive, but bright-eyed, interested, always slightly amused by the complexity of everyone around him. He appeared at Zeus's call the way a candle flame appears, already there, between one moment and the next. Zeus told him to go below, to carry an order to Hades, to bring Persephone back. Hermes descended. The journey down was not unpleasant, for Hermes. He had made it before. He guided the dead here, sometimes, those who needed company on the road. He knew the way the air changed as you went deeper, growing cooler and more still, growing quiet in layers, like walking into a deeper and deeper sleep. The underworld received him calmly. He found Hades in a long hall, seated at the far end of a stone table, doing nothing in particular, which was something Hades had grown very practiced at. Persephone sat some distance away, her back straight, her hands folded in her lap. She had been there for what felt, in the timeless underworld, like a very long time. Hermes delivered Zeus's words. Hades listened. His expression did not change. He was silent for a long while, in the way of someone measuring something invisible. Then he stood, and he walked to where Persephone sat, and he looked at her. That same look from the chariot, the one that held so much and said so little. He told her she could go home. Persephone rose. She moved toward the door. She was almost through it, and then she stopped. She was not certain, later, why she stopped. Perhaps it was something in his face. Perhaps it was the palace itself, which had begun to feel, in some strange way, like a place she understood. Its quiet, its steadiness, its lack of urgency. Perhaps she was simply hungry after all that time, and the pomegranate on the table was the most beautiful shade of red she had ever seen. The red of deep roses, of wine held up to light, of something intensely alive. She reached out and took it. She split it open with her fingers. The seeds were garnet dark, jewel bright, arranged in their chambers with a precision so beautiful it almost looked intentional. She ate 6. Hermes watched. 6 seeds, 6 months of every year. That was the judgment, handed down from Olympus with the careful mathematics of divine compromise. For every seed, 1 month below. The rest of the year she could return to the world above, to the meadows, to her mother, to the long warm days and the smell of new grass and the sound of rivers returning to full strength after winter. Demeter accepted this. She had to. The world needed the harvest, and the harvest needed her, and she needed her daughter, and her daughter. This was the part Demeter took the longest to understand, had made a choice. Not entirely against her will. Persephone came home. Demeter held her for a long time, and the earth felt it. The way fields feel the first rain after a drought, a kind of deep relief that moves through the soil before the green even begins. Slowly, over the days that followed, the world warmed again. The ground softened. Shoots appeared, pale and tentative at first, then stronger, reaching upward with a kind of quiet insistence, the way all living things reach, not toward anything in particular, only toward light. The birds came back. The rivers ran faster. The trees put out their leaves with a kind of rush, as though they had been holding them in reserve, waiting. The fields filled slowly, and the air filled with the sounds of growing, the particular silence of a world working. It was spring, but Persephone did not forget the palace. She did not forget the river sound beneath the stone floors, or the way the torchlight lived inside the black marble, or the quiet of a kingdom where nothing needed to be hurried. She did not forget the way Hades had looked at her when he said she could go, the careful steadiness of it, the way he had not reached after her. She came back. Every year, when the light began to thin and the mornings arrived later and cooler, when the leaves at the edges of things began to turn, first yellow, then orange, then the deep red of certain maples in the late afternoon, Persephone walked back to the place where the earth had opened. She stood there for a moment in the fading meadow, feeling the first cool edge in the air. Then she descended. Below, the palace was always the same dim torchlight, the same long halls, the same quiet that was not lonely once you understood it. Hades was always there, though he would never say he had been waiting. He was always doing something when she arrived, reading, or sitting at the far end of a table, or standing at one of the tall, narrow windows that looked out over the gray fields of Elysium. He would look up. She would take her seat at his side. And the kingdom would settle, as a room settles when the right person enters it. A slight shift in the air, a sense of things finding their proper arrangement. She ruled beside him with a kind of authority that surprised those who had imagined her only as a victim of her story. She heard the petitions of the dead with patience and fairness. She understood something about loss, about transformation, about the difference between an ending and a change. The shades who came before her felt it, that she did not pity them, did not fear what they had become, only listened and decided, with a steadiness that had been built from everything she had passed through. She was not her mother. She was not only her husband's queen. She was Persephone, the one who had stood at the border of 2 worlds and quietly chosen both. And so the seasons came to be, not as punishment, not as the residue of a mistake, but as the shape of a life lived between worlds, the natural rhythm of someone who belongs, fully and truly, to 2 different places. When Persephone is above, Demeter's hands are open, and the earth gives everything it has. The light is long, the days are warm, the growing happens almost too fast to watch. When Persephone descends, Demeter folds inward. The earth rests. The fields go still. The trees release what they no longer need. The light withdraws slowly, like a tide going out, leaving the world clean and quiet and bare. This is not grief, exactly. It is the pause between one breath and the next. The ancient Greeks who told this story lived close enough to the earth to understand that nothing that goes underground is truly gone. A seed is not a loss. Dormancy is not death. The root holds, through all the cold and dark, what the flower will become. The world that Demeter made still turns, season by season. And somewhere beneath it, in a palace of black marble and still air, a young woman who was taken and who chose to return sits beside the lord of a quiet kingdom. She is not unhappy. She is not lost. She is exactly where she decided to be. You can rest now. The story is complete. The seasons are turning, somewhere, the way they always do. Quietly, without announcement, without asking permission. Let the sound of it carry you the rest of the way. Good night.